Scales, scales, scales. There's a lot of scales. There's the pentatonic scale. There's the 5-note structure. There's the 7-note structure, the major scales. There are 9-note scales. There are scales that are sort of imported from other cultures and sort of trying to map them to the Western 12-note structure. It goes on and on and on. Many of them are extremely esoteric. Studying these scales, these other scales, introduces you to harmonic ideas and sounds that you simply just cannot get anywhere else. Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. Today you will learn the harmonic minor scale. I chose harmonic minor from these other scales for a couple of reasons. One is it's just one of my favorite scales. I find it sort of beautifully haunting and incredibly compelling. The other reason I chose it is because it's one of the first scales that I learned. It's a 7-note structure that has the augmented second as an interval inside the scale. If you think of a half step as 1 fret and a whole step as 2 frets, 3 frets is what's called an augmented second or a minor third. In all of the major scale and all of its modes, that interval doesn't exist. The major scale and all of the major scale modes are whole steps and half steps only. This scale has this augmented second in it. And when that is introduced into a 7-note architecture, it just blows the harmony out and creates weird scales, creates these two really fantastic symmetrical stacks that go on forever. It's like, let me just show you. Let's do it. Harmonic minor. Let's just get the sound in our heads. What a cool sounding scale. Playing on A, here are the frets. Let's just get this under our fingers. 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8, 6, 7, 4, 5, 7, 5, 6, 4, 5. Very cool sounding scale. We can think of this architecture in a number of different ways. And again, we always use the major scale as sort of our ruler, like everything we think about in relation to the major scale. So there are two ways to think about this scale. If you already know the natural minor scale, A, Aeolian in this example, you can think of harmonic minor as the natural minor or Aeolian mode with a raised 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Another way to get at the exact same notes is to think of this as a major scale with a flat 3 and a flat 6. So here's the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, 7, 1. Two different ways to arrive at the exact same notes. We're going to look at this for our example as a major scale with a flat 3 and a flat 6. Because the major scale, maybe it's more familiar than Aeolian or natural minor, it's a little bit more stable to think about. So I'm going to put that on the screen here, and we're just going to leave it there so we can just see it. Let's talk about these intervals. The intervallic design of the harmonic minor scale is unique in that it introduces a new interval, the augmented second. So if you think about a half step as the smallest interval and a whole step as the next up, 2 frets apart, the augmented second is this. It's 3 frets. It's also called a minor third, but for our purposes here, we'll call this an augmented second. So the major scale has whole steps and half steps. The harmonic minor scale, the intervals go like this. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, augmented second, and half step. Interesting. That augmented second starts to shear out and do weird things to the harmony. And I'm going to show you that stuff right now. I'm going to harmonize the scale. If you don't know about harmonization, this video right here teaches you how to harmonize a scale. Basically, we're just using that method playing every other note through 3 notes to sort of harvest the chords that come from this scale. So I'm going to do this rather quickly, but if you're not familiar with harmonization, you might want to go back and just review that. The 1 chord is minor. The 2 chord is diminished. The 3 chord is the first one with that to hit that augmented second interval, is augmented. This is an augmented chord. The 4 chord is minor. The 5 chord is major, and the 6 chord, which is only a half step away, is also major. That's an interesting sound. And then the 7 chord is diminished. Back to the 1. I'm going to review those. Minor, diminished, augmented, minor, major, major up a half step, diminished, minor. Back to the 1. Fascinating. Here's another layer of depth that just blows my mind. Let's just look at the scale. When I build that chord from the 3, that augmented chord, it's unique. Here's something that's really mind-blowing. If you look at the scale underneath this architecture, I can stack major third intervals through for eternity. In other words, if I took the harmonic minor scale and mapped it out for octaves forever, you can, from the third, build major third intervals forever. It goes on and on forever. So this augmented chord, you can build this anywhere you want in major thirds. Fascinating. It's one of the only scale architectures that builds that chord. That doesn't happen in any other 7-note scale. Pretty amazing. The other thing it does is from the 7th degree, again, thinking about the scale through octaves on to infinity, you can build and stack minor third intervals from the 7 forever. This is the only 7-note scale architecture that builds the diminished 7 arpeggio. So that architecture you can also move up in minor thirds. Forever and ever, anywhere on the fretboard. Those 2 symmetrical chord shapes only occur in the harmonic minor scale. So I just find that absolutely fascinating. It just intrigues me to no end. So there it is, harmonic minor. Okay, there's harmonic minor. If you'd like to hear somebody else besides me play it, listen to anything that Yngwie Malmsteen has ever played. Most of that stuff is harmonic minor. Ritchie Blackmore used it with Deep Purple. Randy Rhoads used it a lot with Ozzy Osbourne. If you're an R&B fan, there's an old song from, I think it was 1988. Bobby Brown released a song called My Prerogative, which is all in harmonic minor. It's a very cool sort of, cool R&B song. Anyway, it's out there. Fascinating to hear what people have done with it. Oh, by the way, that song I did this solo breakdown for, Leela Downs' Agua de Rosa, is all in harmonic minor. Fascinating as well. Okay, I hope you enjoy this. I've tabbed it all out. That's on my Patreon page in the description below. If you're interested in what I'm doing here and enjoy this sort of context about music theory, when I post over on Patreon, there's always a little bit more context. Sometimes there's questions asked and we're talking about this stuff. So if you're interested in going a little deeper, that might be a great place for you to go. And of course, any support in that regard is greatly appreciated. It fuels this whole thing. I deeply hope that you fall in love with harmonic minor the way I did. It just changed my ears. It opened me up to new sounds that I had never heard before. And just looking at the architecture from a mathematical standpoint also blew my mind. Anyway, hope you enjoy it as much as I do, and I'll see you next time.